in here on Zoom and we'll get rolling. Let's see here. Got a good number here. And counting. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Good to see you all at Piano Tech Radio Hour once again. You lovely piano industry nerds. We're all piano nerds. That's something we've clearly established here in this virtual world that we inhabit. All right. And FYI, for those of you just jumping in, and I'll be letting more people in here as time accrues here. But we're going to try out a few new kind of formatting things today, and so bear with us as we do a little bit of experimentation. Your feedback is welcome as well, and yeah, so just let us know how you think things go, and if you've got any interesting insights, then that'll be great to hear about. And so let me pull up some notes here and we'll get rolling. Let's see here. Where did I put them? That's funny. I sent them to you. I sent them to you, Morgan, but I'm trying to find them.
I'm going to send them back?
Yeah. To put it, yeah, just send it. I think I emailed it to you, right?
Yep.
Let's see. Just look at me. There we go. Session notes. I sent it also to you, Paul, so that's cool. All right. Morgan, do you want to try reading the introduction?
Yeah.
All right, let's have you do that.
We got a big crowd today.
Yeah.
Welcome,
for
everyone.
Good reason. Wait one second. Wait one second. All right, I'm going to spotlight me and you, and then I'll bring in our guest when it's time for him to come rolling in. But yeah, go ahead. And do you want to read his bio too, or do you want me to do that?
You can read the bio.
Okay, you read the intro, and I'll read the bio, and then we'll bring on our lovely guest.
Welcome, everyone, to the Piano Technician Radio Hour. Each week we come here and we bring in some quite interesting and knowledgeable folks from the piano industry. The Piano Tech Radio Hour is brought to you by the Piano Technician Master Classes, which brings you cutting-edge instruction from the piano industry masters without leaving your home. Find out more at pianotechniciansmasterclass.com.
Awesome. And today's guest, I guess let's bring him up on the spotlight too, so you can see his pretty face. All right, there he is. His name is Paul Ria. Paul has 30 plus years of experience in tuning and rebuilding pianos with multiple certifications for QRS, Piano Desk, Petrov, Highland, Sauter, and more. He has taught piano technicians all over the world while leading classes in regulation, rebuilding, voicing, piano technology, tooling, factory production, and beyond. Paul has a state-of-the-art shop, which we can see a tiny bit of behind him, and all the finest tools and equipment available. His knowledge and friendship with every piano and piano parts manufacturer and supplier in the world only add to his ability to service our every piano need. And you can tell I took a little bit of that from his personal Piano Technician's website. But Paul, welcome to Piano Tech Radio Hour. It's really good to have you here. How you doing today?
We're doing good. Thanks, Brian. Ethan. I have a friend here that's Brian Janey.
Oh yeah, I know Brian Janey. Yeah, awesome. Good to have him here today. All right, well, listen, I'm going to launch in here with our first topic of conversation. And just for people's info today, me and Morgan will probably pass the torch between us. And of course, we can open things up to questions as we roll along. But my first thing is, what made you think piano tech sounds interesting? What's your entry point into the piano industry?
Desperation.
Nice.
I was managing a store in Reno, Nevada. And at that time, you could call a piano technician one day and call him a couple days later and they're gone. A very transient area. And so I finally decided, well, it's not rocket science. I'll do it myself. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
A lot more rocket science, it seems.
Yeah, that is, I think that is the sort of famous last words of almost everyone that's opened up a piano for the first time. Is just, hey, this couldn't be so hard. I know how to tune a guitar. I think I can handle this.
Yeah, well, I started out as a bookkeeper in a store, then went into sales management, even owned my own store, worked at factories. So it's kind of a progression.
Cool. Yeah, the next thing I wanted to know is, we've seen that you've worked with different companies and throughout the world. What has it been like for you to work in Europe and Asia as part of what you do?
Europe is a lot easier to work in. Culture is closer to our culture. In China, where one of our factories is at, it's a different story. We work to live, they live to work.
Mm.
In getting around the old communist mindset in factory production, where somebody on the line decides to be a hero and changes a screw to a cheaper screw or smaller screw because it's cheaper, it's a constant watching to see what's going on.
And what do you mean by like what constant watching? Who's watching who, and what's
I actually
what's
have
that
boot. I actually
involved?
have boots on the. I actually have boots on the ground in China, that watches the production from the time the wood comes in the door to the piano goes in the box.
Wow.
We call that process birth to box.
How has COVID changed the factory work the last couple of years?
Jeez. We're about, the last I heard, the factory's about 30,000 pianos behind.
Wow.
Wow, that's a lot.
What's annual production?
Oh my gosh.
I'm trying to get a sense of, how far behind
Yep.
they are.
Well, our annual production is about 40,000.
Okay, so you're nearly a
In
year.
fact, the factory was closed on and off for probably well over a year.
Wow.
And then minimal production, and then you have to train new people and reboot your suppliers. And the supply chain there is also a problem. And the same with our factory in the Czech Republic. It's supply trade issues. The country opens and closes and opens and closes. So just like everybody else, it's been a nightmare.
So how is it different than manufacturing like in the US, say? Like COVID aside, is there any main differences between?
Yeah, in China, there's a huge difference. They'll work 6 and 7 days a week, 10 hours a day, when the factory's in full production. Breaks are very short. There's a let it shine on attitude about safety things. But generally, yeah.
So you're saying in Asia, the people are working more in terms of the hours and the days of the week, but then you're saying safety is a little bit less of a factor, or they're more.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
OSHA is like non-existent there.
Right. Right.
They're not susceptible to California Air Resource Board. They're not susceptible to the EPA. We manufacture everything on site, from the plates to our own action parts. Everything is done right on site. And you can't do that in the US because, well, we can't foundry stuff. We can't make plates here in the US. Finishing things is a nightmare in the US. So there's a lot of difference.
Why is like refinishing things a nightmare in the US? What makes it so, and what makes it easier? And we're talking specifically about Asia, right? Not necessarily Europe. That makes it easier.
Well, like for instance, in California, I mean, you can spend $100,000 on a spray booth, and then you're inspected twice a year, and you have to use this material and that material, whether it works or not. That's what you're stuck with. In Asia, I mean, we have a 1 million square foot spray booth. So
Wow.
And we don't have OSHA checking up on us. We don't have um, restrictions on thinners, restrictions on CFCs. There's a lot of advantages to that in Asia compared to the United States. And that's one of the reasons things are less expensive coming from Asia.
Okay. Let's talk about you being a piano technician. What were some setbacks that you had maybe early on, maybe some roadblocks, and what lessons did you maybe learn from them?
Well, if there's a wrong way of doing something, I've already done it sometimes twice. Uh, and that's how I learned the entire business. I'm sure most of you know Dale Irwin. I worked under his father for quite a while. And Dale and I actually had a shop together for a period of time. So I've always surrounded myself with people who know more than I do. And that's how I've learned this business. And even when I teach classes, there's always something from that class I learn and take with me. Setbacks. Yeah, I've done some major mistakes. I broke a graph in a Steinway art case M right at the break and drilled out the A graph. The drill bit broke in it. Finally got the drill bit out. Then the easy out broke in it. Finally ended up having to punch it out with a plasma cutter and then have a very skilled welder bring it back to life. You want to talk about heart seizure?
Wow. That actually reminds me. I don't know if I want to bring this up because it was slightly controversial in a previous session here. Somebody's talking about tightening A graphs sort of while the strings are in the piano, like while the piano is strung. Do you have an opinion on that? Is that something that's feasible? Does that make sense? Does that sound like the craziest thing you've ever heard of?
Tightening, no. Adjusting angles, yes.
Okay. Got it. So moving it slightly while it's in the piano and the strings are in. It doesn't sound completely outlandish.
No.
Okay.
And I don't know if you've noticed a lot of the European and a lot of the Asian A graphs have a conical base, so that as you tighten it, it actually flares slightly to allow you to adjust it even further than you would think it should be able to go.
Oh, that's really
So
interesting.
sometimes look at the bottom of the A graph and look at the seat, and it's kind of interesting.
Would you say that you have learned about, like, I've really enjoyed the time we've got to meet with Del Fondrick, because he just has a very interesting way of thinking about putting pianos together. And specifically, I really like how he thinks from first principles, right? He kind of starts from like, okay, why do we have this part of the piano? And then how can I make it if that's the goal, right? And it's often interesting how he comes up with alternatives to the way things are that maybe achieve a goal actually better, but people wouldn't think of that because they want to do it the way it's been done. One example is he used epoxy to refurbish some old soundboards, and ended up actually in many cases actually making them sound better than maybe the piano would have if it hadn't been epoxied, out of a principle that it needed something like kind of hard, not necessarily crowned, for example, in order to get the right sound out of the instrument, stuff like that. But in terms of your experience, like from a design perspective, what have you been able to kind of learn the process of designing a piano, or is it more working with the things that you have and just making them better? Any thoughts on that?
Things that I have are making them better. We've done some interesting things when the first tuned duplexing coming out in the new line of pianos from Petrov. I commented to the Petrov fellow at the NAMM show that these aren't tuned very well. He said, "Well, we laser measure them." I said, "Time out. You laser measure, you make a soundboard by hand, you mount the bridge by hand, you notch the bridge by hand, and you're telling me now you can suddenly laser measure for tuning? About 24 hours later, I was on an airplane. And then we made the duplexing tunable after the strings are in. So things like that. In the factory setting, there's a lot of protocols that I set up for quality control that actually speed things up. We changed some materials to make things better, and that's what I excel at.
Makes a lot of sense.
You tune much?
Not as much as I used to, but yeah, I still do a lot of tuning.
Okay.
That's one of my favorite things, to go out and meet my clients, and they're like an extended family.
I don't know about that. You might have a different extended family than me, because that isn't always a good thing, but
Well, these I get paid from.
oh yeah, at least you get paid from that extended family.
I want to pivot real quick to talking about workshops and being efficient. I'm actually working on building out my fourth shop, and when I'm doing it, I'm trying to think about like the processes and how I can save time between things and whatnot. So, are there any kind of basic tips or guidelines you would have for someone that's kind of redoing their shop or building one from scratch?
Don't change tooling.
Okay.
So let me explain that. Behind me, you see drill presses and sanders and special fixtures. Rather than switching tools from say my boring jig to the coving jig, I have a second drill press for the coving jig, and there's this. I have a big bandsaw at the start for cutting the hammers to length, and then they go to the boring setup on the one drill press, and then they go to the arcing sander, which is all set up just for arcing, and then to the next drill press where it is set up just for coving, to the next one who is just set up strictly for tapering, and then right next to that is the installation bench.
Okay.
So make everything factory-like, and you'll be a much happy camper. Initially, it's going to cost you more money, but it'll save you a whole lot of time.
So it sounds like if anybody wants to make a buck on that old drill press, Morgan Cowell is in the market.
The other thing is organizing your parts. I have closed-in cabinets with boxes of my parts with the part number on the front and where it came from, like if it's from Schaff or Piano Tech or Pacific Piano, where it came from. I keep about 3 pianos worth of stuff in stock for everything. And that way I don't have to wait for stuff to get here other than, flying cameras and strings and stuff like that. But all my parts are here and ready to go. That again saves you time, and time is money.
How many projects will you work on at once?
See, I'm looking on that shelf, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And there's another shelf behind me with another 4 or 5 on it. And then to my right is the QRS install. On installs, I do one at a time. I only bring one in. Action-wise, I have pianos in here that we order parts for, and then they come through. And then nobody else comes in until there's a hole for them. I don't like keeping things for extended periods of time.
That led to my next question, which might be a sensitive topic, and that is, what's the most overdue project either on your shelf right now or that has been, or is that not your domain?
No, that's I think the longest one we've had in here, and it wasn't my fault, the lady moved. It's been here for about 4 months.
Oh, good for you.
She's still not settled, so it might
So
be
on that,
longer.
On that topic then, do you have any tips for like keeping on schedule and keeping on task with projects? Also, maybe even keeping on budget, right? Because I know some technicians struggle with, they take on what seems like a cool project. Maybe there's a lot of outlay of cash from you know, the piano owner, but then in the end they're making like $2 an hour or something. Got any thoughts on that?
It's going to happen to you every once in a while. I don't care who you are and how organized you are. That's going to happen. I try to avoid that. My beautiful bride is very involved in the business and helps me with paperwork and keeping things aligned and put in its place. Larger projects, by the end of a project, usually my shop looks like a tornado hit it. We try to avoid that. And with her help, I've gotten better at that. But those are some of the tips. When you go out and bid a job, look at it very closely. I made a mistake. It was a year before last where I brought in a piano QRS system install, and I did it sight unseen. That was a huge mistake. When the piano got here, I found out it was an X player, so I ended up rebuilding the entire bottom of the piano to make it strong enough to hold player system. I didn't make a whole lot of money on that.
Yeah, I think yeah, you mentioned that to me before when we were talking about sort of mistakes and things that you've made previously. That's yeah, those are big ones, right? Sight unseen, that's a very strong lesson that I've learned. And actually, luckily with modern technology, I think a lot of people don't think to do it, but just to like ask somebody to send you a picture or a video, when they're on the phone with you,
the pictures and everything look like normal.
Oh man.
Until you got it here, it's like, oh my goodness. So,
oh man.
Unless it's a known brand and fairly new, I have to look at it. I've also run into piano actions when I've gotten some in where even when I've looked at them, I didn't notice a couple of nuances where I ended up making parts for them because they're not available.
That was one of my first jobs where I did a major action work. I looked at the piano and it looked like something that was manageable, and I thought I could order parts. And yeah, I didn't realize until I got it home and kind of had committed to the job that those parts were quite difficult to access and alternatives were slim. Yeah. I'm going to cut in right here. And what we typically do during the session, there are people viewing on Facebook and YouTube, but we love to have them jump in and join us on Zoom. So we'll give them a reason to. And I'm just going to say goodbye on Facebook, YouTube. I put a link in the chat on those platforms that shows you how to join us. So feel free to jump in if you want to catch the rest of the session, and we'll see you here. We'll also, you're welcome to come in and put your questions in the chat, or maybe even come on and talk a second with Paul. But so we'll see you later on Facebook and YouTube, but we'll continue the session here right now.
We have a question from Judy about helpers.